you're not going to get rich being a realtor. No, you're not going to get rich being a broker. You're going to get rich with the money that you do with it, how you manage it. Anything you do, it's how you manage it. Money is like grabbing sand. You can grab a handful of sand, it's going to run through your fingers. So the trick is how to hang on to what you make and how to manage it. So I was trying to explain to everyone now is, how do you reinvest that money that you make? How do you get that money to keep growing for you? And usually, you can only do so much work as a realtor. So if you want to start, if you want to work yourself to death and never see your family, you can have some amount of success, but you're probably not going to be very happy.
Welcome back to another episode of High Value Discussions. My guest is a distinguished professional with an impressive career spanning more than 2 decades in real estate. Known for his deep market knowledge and strategic acumen, he has successfully navigated complex property transactions, making him an invaluable asset to his clients and a respected leader in his field. In addition to his real estate expertise, he has established a significant presence in the entertainment industry as both an actor and a producer. His diverse skill set and commitment have enabled him to deliver compelling performances and influential productions. In this conversation, he will share his extensive experience, insights into the dynamics of real estate, and discuss the intricate balance required to thrive in 2 demanding professional roles. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Raymond Ruiz.
Back in the early 2000s, I was boxing with Guerrero Boxing with Robert Guerrero on them.
Okay.
And then Javier would send the AKA guys over sometimes for some boxing sparring. And, to get them just straight up boxers, pro boxers and things like that. And so we had kind of got that relationship. And so later, I'd probably say 2008, I was with the fight team in Sacramento. And then I came back to San Jose. And I hit up Javier, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm thinking my hand speed's gone. I can't do the pro boxing thing, but I think my hand speed's good enough still for MMA. And he's like, yeah, man, you want to come out and walk? And he let me walk on the team. So probably around 2008, 2009, I was on with the AM team.
So you wanted to be a fighter?
Well, I enjoyed it, yeah. And I'll see where it goes, And but you know how it is. The fighter is a young man game, and I was already older. Yeah. And the problem I used to have is because I was a heavy puncher, and I don't have a big name. So no one wants to risk that. Catch that knockout, that flash knockout on a name, not a name. And so even in my boxing, when people are finding out I'm knocking out a lot of sparring partners, people are ducking me. I'd show up to fights, and they're like, "No, we pulled our fighter," or like, I think my first fight, the guy was like had 15 fights on my debut.
Jeez.
And I won, but like my coach at the time, he didn't tell me. He goes, "Oh, it's both your guys' debut." And I'm like, all right, coach, because he knew, like, he wanted to get me out of, it is 90% of the fights between the ears.
Yeah, man. It was the best, one of the best chapters of my life for sure, man. It probably gave me everything when it comes to my day to day. I feel like without fighting, I don't think I would be the same person that I am today. I don't know where the heck I would be, honestly.
Well, I remember I used to see you guys because you guys were on the telling when I was leaving, and you had the looks, you were good, you're fast, you had all the stuff.
Man.
You had all the ingredients.
Well, brother, you know what? I really, really want to go back. There was a beginning, and I'm curious about that beginning. What was your childhood like, brother?
My beginning was not the silver spoon in the mouth beginning. Very poor. I grew up in San Jose, bounced around, predominantly on the south side. But we were usually the poorest of the poor family. Families worked multiple jobs, always hustling. We never lived in a home, like a regular home, until I bought my first home. We always lived in apartments, or if we lived in a house, it was the family's house to let us stay there or couch surf. And, it was very, very difficult. And then when my family was together before we finally lost our family home, they were working multiple jobs. And then my father was working at a company at night. We were the janitors. So we would go and he would work a couple nights a week as a janitor when he wasn't working his other job, and my mother. And we would go as a family. we're cleaning toilets and we're trying to get done early enough so we can get some sleep for school or whatever, which isn't very conducive to good grades and things like that, right? Because you're dead tired, and we'd get up and we're making coffee and we're rushing out, and very on my own latchkey kid, as they said, and it was difficult. And we lost our home. I was about 14 years old when we lost our home. I was pretty much on my own from 14 on until adulthood. So it was pretty tough.
Yeah.
Really tough growing up. But that resilience and that toughness, kind of gives you that grit and that determination to move forward in life. But one of the, there was a couple of things that kind of painted those values, right? And we one thing we all loved was like films and movies, especially being alone, watched a lot of TV, and it would take me other places, right, and kind of bring me the old school values, right. And we had that old school hard work ethic, you're a person of your word. You don't break your word. You may not have anything, but you got your word.
Yeah.
Right. And you got those ethics. You don't break those. They may not be everybody's ethics, but there were ethics, right?
Yes.
And, I kind of kept those core values growing up and tried to instill that in my family and those around us. And, I was thinking back on that in the beginning, like, what's the difference between education and wisdom, right? And everyone always talks about, they're book smart, but they're not common sense, right? You hear that a lot, especially or like the youth come out of college, you get the old timers in the industry. But I thought about it, and it's wisdom came at a cost. Where book smarts, maybe you did, you studied, but you didn't sacrifice, you didn't suffer for it.
Yeah.
But with the wisdom, it came a sacrifice, some type of, trauma or just hard work or life, right? Usually it comes at something adversity you had to go through and learn once you had your hand burned or experienced it. So it's something that, books can't teach you. It's that wisdom, when's the right time to use the knowledge and when's the right time to hold it back or, when to walk away.
When you were growing up, I feel like there's always that question when we're becoming a young man of like what you wanted to be. Some people want to be athletes. Some people want to be a doctor, a lawyer. There's always a certain title that we want to attach to our name. And was there something that kind of caught your attention of what you wanted to be while you were becoming a young man?
When I was young, not so much, right? Or, I would think about things, but the life that we lived, all those other, like just having a home and a stable life was like a fantasy. Just to have, like that stable home where like the parents are home every night, there's food on the table, your mom could say, hey, guys, wake up, time to go to school, and pick you up from school or the college and all that. That was like a fantasy to me. That was a dream come true. And, I used to get so frustrated because I kind of considered my sister and I good kids. We listened to our parents as much as we could. And I would get frustrated, like, got cheated a little bit, and I would get angry. Like, I see these kids that had every opportunity and they didn't appreciate it, and we're fighting for every little nickel. Yeah. And, but, I would always keep that hope, right? The hope that someday things would get better and we'd keep pushing through and persevere. And like you said, the love of reading and books, my mom, she would read to us, and we'd get like, the thrift store books, or she'd buy us books and read us like the 1001 bedtime stories when we were real little, and kind of taught us that love for reading, even though we weren't in school. And to this day, like even my room, you go in my room, it looks like this, the love and books and knowledge and just that thirst, right? And, the world's at your fingertips now, if you look, but, growing up, in the beginning, there was that, well, someday we'll have a home, or I don't know. And then there was the hopelessness for a while. Yeah. And then when I got old enough to realize I was empowered in my own life, I was 100% control of my own actions and my own responses to whatever came in life.
Yeah. And
that was really powerful. And I ran into someone, and he told me, like, I told him my dream, someday I hope to have a home or have a family, right, of my own. He goes, that's it? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like going to be a miracle for me, especially where I was at that point. Mm-hmm. And he goes, that's all you're good for? There's nothing else? And he kept telling me, and then I'm like, well, I don't know. And he goes, well, figure it out, because it sounds like you just want to live and die. And I thought it was kind of cruel, but he gave me like a double-edged sword. It was a gift and a curse, because ever since then now, I go, what's next? So now when I have this accomplishment, it's always, okay, what's the next chapter? Where can we go from here? And I drive everyone nuts around me, because they go, when's enough enough? How many times you're going to reinvent yourself? And my brother-in-law, when he was alive, he used to just go, you never go half-ass on anything. He goes, you come up with a crazy scheme and you go head first in it and somehow it works out. And he laughs. And he goes, and he used to cheer for me for everything. And like we grew up together. He was about my sister, and he was 16, and they were together all the way to his death, like 22 years. Yeah. And he would always laugh, though, encourage me, and he was like one of my biggest fans. But that to be something, I never knew what the end goal would be at the time. And now I look at it, and you think about legacy. And the legacy I want to leave is opportunity. I created opportunity for my family. I created opportunities for my loved ones, people around me. Or maybe someday I leave that spark for the person out there hopeless, the person that's suffering, the person that doesn't have, any guidance. They'll say, hey, take one more step. Who knows where it's going to go? And that's one thing I learned was that, you can be self-destructive in negative times. You can pick up the bottle. You could fight with your family. You could do all those negative activities people expect you to do and self-destruct and implode. Or you could find a way to do something positive, take that one more positive step. And I remember there was a point in my life where I was like, man, God, if this is all I got, just let me die. If this is all you're going to have is misery, why keep me around for that? Just let me go to sleep and I'll wake up. And I would wake up and I'm like, damn, I'm still here. I better put my boots on and get to work. And then, I never lost that hope, like to do what I needed to do. And you find out that you take enough positive actions or, you walk a mile, right? When you have your head down, you're just taking one step after another, trudging through it. And you find out that the positivity and the good work you do, it has a resounding effect, right? Just like, stocks where they say compounding interest. All of a sudden, when the dam breaks, all the good things happen. Yeah. Right. The positivity, the good stuff comes back. And you didn't self-destruct, so you don't have to make up from the stuff you self-destruct from. You're just moving forward with positivity.
Are you very calculated with, say, time, energy, people? Because, like you said, that positivity is very contagious, and so is negativity, so is distraction, so is cheap dopamine hits, and it's very easy to, say, cling on those, and it's also very easy to cling on positivity, but you have to lean towards either or. And it shows which one you lean on the most, especially growing up too, where you were surrounded by, say, the headaches and the hurdles so much to the point where all you wanted was positivity. So in a way, you just created those opportunities for yourself. When you started jumping into that trajectory, did it ever try to bring you back to the negative side?
Well, I think always. There's always something to trip you up, right? And you start realizing your value, right? And you realize you can care about certain people and individuals and realize they're just not good for you. And as you start going, even though you don't purposely mean to be called away from the herd, certain people get called away and you start moving on a different trajectory. And like you say, the high performers, there's a reason when you see the high performers, there's not 1,000 people next to them, because not everyone has that perseverance and that mental focus to get through that. And it's kind of hard because the same people that cheer for you at one point will probably say, yeah, it's great. He made it. He's doing well. Then it's, hey, then they start doing the self-assessment. Oh, he got lucky, right? You got lucky. And I think it was Pitbull said, I found out the harder I worked, the luckier I got. And it's true. But then what happens when you start having any type of success is the success changed them, right? You hear that. But you realize, at least for me, that you can't make yourself available to everybody. Not everybody's worthy of your time in the sense that, you can give them all the money, all the attention in the world to help them, and they'll just want more and never do nothing with it. They'll keep coming back, and all that time you devote to them, they're not trying to get the hand up. They want the hand out. Yeah. And so you got to kind of say, hey, who do I want to invest my time in? And who's going to help me along the way like I want to help them. And it's not always self-centered, but you got to be careful because there's a lot of pitfalls. And some people, they want to see you fail just to watch you not do better than them. Certain friends, they live in the remember when time and different things like that. Or, some people that they still see you the same way. Well, he's a fraud, right? He's a wannabe, or try to pick apart anything you have. And I think, going back on it, when I experienced as a young man, because I'd get excited.
Yeah.
People get excited, and you want to share ideas and share inspiration because it's contagious, right? You want to be around inspiring people because you feed off it. It's synergistic. And I noticed that I would share with some people, and they would really be receptive to it. Other people would find a negative in it, and it would just kind of kill your vibe. Like I'd be real happy or real enthusiastic about an idea, and they would just kill it. And I realized, like, your vision's not for everybody. Whatever your belief is. Like for me, I say, if God gave you vision, it was for you. It wasn't for everybody, so they can't see it. And when the time's right, the right people will come along to help you along in your vision. So protect it because it's something special that was given just to you at the time.
Yeah.
And I learned that kind of be selective who you share things with because, if you tell the wrong person, it could really stymie your progress. And, like you said, the type of people will come in and tear you down or distract you with different things. And, one thing you got to be good at, and I know you're probably do very well with this, is self-assessment, right? You get those honest choices like, hey, did I do everything I needed to do to be successful today? Did I accomplish all the things I wanted to accomplish? How am I doing on my progress? And it's a tough talk because you got to be honest with yourself and say, hey, maybe I'm not as successful as I want to be because of me. And some people are not prepared to have that conversation with themselves. If they look at and you guys had the same start, or maybe they were ahead of you in life in whatever aspect, and they see all of a sudden you took a couple leaps ahead of them, they have to say, am I doing something different? Should I be doing something different? Which usually the easiest thing to say is they got lucky. They were handed it, things like that, and they want to tear it down because it's better to tear you down than have a self-assessment and say, hey, maybe I should be doing something different with my life.
I am very cautious of like how because I would say I'm very public for sure. And I remember I made mistakes back when somebody would ask me, what's up next? What are you doing now? And then I would say it. And then I would see the energy of their reaction. And I'm like, I started to see it very consistent. And I'm like, there's a pattern here. Yeah. I was like, maybe some of the people don't want me to do so good. Whether it's people who are close to me, whether people who say they call me friends, etc. And I'm just like, something's a little off here. I was like, I'm going to switch things up a bit. So months pass by, years pass by, and that same question would pop up. Oh, like, what's going on? What you working on now? It's not like nothing. Nothing at all. No. Like, you're not worthy of that sentence coming out of my mouth or paragraphs because it's going to be a waste of my breath. And I'm not going to get not even a reaction, but it's like, there's no, say, genuine support. It's like fighting taught me that how to, like, say, read an individual. Like, you're studying somebody from head to toe, like if they're tired, if they're fatigued, like the poker face, you know what I mean? You get to read their body language, etc. So, when you're speaking to somebody in that kind of fashion about telling them about your goals, your dreams, your vision, and then you see their reaction, you're just like, oh, you're one of those people. I'm just mindful now. Now I just say nothing. I say that a lot now.
Yeah.
Like, really, because I know who to say it to and I know who not to. Yeah. And then usually when things pop up, they're like, dude, I thought you said you weren't working on anything. I'm not.
Or, sometimes they may actively try to sabotage it. And so you got to be careful. And I know, like you said, I noticed it. And at first, you get so excited and you want to share with everyone. And when I first started doing certain things, I wanted to bring everyone with me. I'm like, let's go. Let's do this. We can all work together, team. I could go this far alone, but imagine what we could do as a team. Like a herd of lions. Imagine what we could do. And they would say, yeah. But when it came time to bleed and work for it, no one wanted to work for it. And then, like you said, then the hate starts coming in. It's tough. Then I learned that, like you said, you can still have that relationship and care for them. But, some people, you got to love them from afar.
Yeah, no, I've definitely learned that, man. We all learn that the hard way, but it's like we almost have to, like, put ourselves in those situations, in those rooms to kind of experience that for ourselves. Sometimes it hurts, especially when it's people who are very, very close to you. I feel like that's the hardest part. And then something that I'm also preparing for is when things do get a little bit bigger and higher, is to really pay attention to the ones who actually supported and the ones who didn't in the beginning all of a sudden want to jump on the bandwagon. I have to be mindful with that too, and make sure I don't lose my sight with that. Because right now I'm staying grounded. I'm keeping track of names, really am. But I'm also making sure that I don't lose that. Leading to that, the rough childhood that you had, and then obviously when you were getting a little bit older, and then you always like you were thinking of what did you want to be, and then those two words eventually popped up, which was real estate. What caught your interest about real estate? What made you want to like say seek it and just dive all in?
Well, what happened was I didn't plan to be a realtor. I stumbled into it, kind of like most of the opportunities, but I had my ear open always for opportunity. I was kind of like a serial entrepreneur. So, fast forward before making the choice to dive into real estate, I was, like I said, doing the boxing, winding down the boxing career. And it really hurt to kind of hang it up prematurely. And my coach and managers were like, you don't have to walk away from the game completely. Why don't you manage and maybe we become promoters? And I said, yeah, I didn't even think about that because I was a young man. I was in my 20s, early 20s.
Yeah.
And I said, you think we could? He goes, yeah, I'm already halfway there. I just need some cash. And I had been saving money up from my other ventures. So I had like vending machines, I had, like I said, the boxing promotion, different ventures I would do. I had been saving up to buy a home, driving a hoopty, working for the city of San Jose. Shout out to all my brothers in the city of San Jose and sisters. And then they came to the lending, it changed, where you could get this 100% financing. You didn't need as much money down. So that freed up a bunch of money I had saved for ventures. So then I said, okay. I had the vending machines. I went in with some cash with my my old former manager and boxing coach.
Yeah.
And we started doing the boxing promotions, and I was shopping for a home at the same time. And as we were shopping for the home, I met some really good people. And I was like, man, like these guys are making really good money for working half as hard as I felt like I was working. Especially shoveling asphalt in the city of San Jose in the middle of summer, things like that. And I was like, man, this is nice. I wonder how it'd be feel to go home clean. As we're in the process, like I'm gonna ask him how to become a realtor or how to get into the real estate game. Yeah. And so I made the ask after we got to know each other, and we'd been kind of like shopping around for homes. Yeah. And they both kind of laughed because I was with the lender and the realtor. They were friends, and they go, "We thought you'd be a good realtor." Just how you were and your business mind, and you're not just a knuckle dragger, but you really are interested. You were trying to learn all the facets, asking us really challenging questions, and a pretty tough negotiator. Mm-hmm. Even at I think I was 23 at the time when I bought my first home, 24. Yeah. And so they go, let's talk, let's get you in the game. And to their credit, they did. They opened some doors for me, and I started on the lending side before the laws changed. And everyone thought I was crazy. The guys like, real estate? What do you know about real estate? And I told them, I don't know, but I'm going to learn because there's a lot of money to be made in it. And so the fellas, they were real supportive. They're, like my big brothers and, surrogate fathers in the city. And they would laugh because they go, you're like reverse Superman. You go into the bathroom and you change into a suit and tie and come out in a suit and tie. And I was working for the company, trying to learn at night. Sometimes I'd be up to like 1:30 at night. I was taking the classes. And the corporation they got me in had a lot of training, corporate training. Mm-hmm. And I was embarrassed, though, because sometimes I'd be dirty and stinky. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have time to shower, so I would always hide from everyone. But I started closing some deals. And the owner of the company was like, who's this guy I'm cutting checks for I never met? He's working for a team. I've never even seen this guy in the office. And they go, but he's closing some files, this. And then, like we finally started making a little name, and I met some good people in the corporation, but I kind of stumbled into it. But it took a lot of hard work, and everyone kind of laughed. And one thing with real estate, usually, I believe your mom's in lending. Usually your first people to get the deal from is someone in your family or a friend or extended one. So finally, someone gave me a referral and was like, hey, man, I want you to do a refi. Help me do the refi on my home. And then it just kind of synergistically started growing. But that's how it started. Yeah. And, the thing that I fell in love with and with real estate wasn't so much the money, it was the opportunity, right? And that's where I was telling all my friends and everyone, I go, they messed up now. They gave the wolf the keys to the hen house. We're all getting houses. We're all gonna have homes. We're all gonna grow. And a lot of people, they looked at me side eyed with it. They were like, he's working an angle or whatever. And I just wanted us all to grow, all have opportunity. And I was trying to force all my friends, like, don't, let's figure it out. Let's get you in a house now. Let's, this is our opportunity, because most of us grew up poor, friends and family. And I'm like, this is our opportunity, to go. And some family, it's hard to convince, because your uncles and your aunts, your grandparents, they remember when you were a kid and you're a knucklehead and you maybe, you burned down the garage, or, when you're young and you got drunk and, things like that. So you have to erase that image of yourself and show them, this is the new image of me. This is the one you can trust with your biggest investment. So, it takes a lot of transformation, and, you really got to be a student of the game and be worthy of the chance when they give it to you, because you don't want to drop the ball.
In the beginning phases of real estate, especially entering the game, what were some of probably the biggest hurdles? And did you ever experience any doubt during? Because a lot of people, when they enter a specific field, sometimes they get a little bit overwhelmed. And sometimes they're like, man, I don't think I can do this. This thing's, all the paperwork, all the laws connected to this. It's like, I don't think I can do this. Did you ever experience any doubt along the way, especially in the beginning?
I still experience doubt, and everything, there's always that little voice in the back of your head. But in the beginning, I definitely didn't feel worthy. And I definitely felt like a fraud, that, you don't belong here. And, but I go, I'm gonna figure it out. And, like I said, you see these people that were in suit and ties, and this is during the heyday. What happened was, in the early 2000s, like 2000 to 2004, the lending industry changed, and you were able to work under the Department of Corporations. You didn't even need to be licensed to be a lender. You could work under the Department of Corporations on the lending side. And so realtors need to be licensed. People in the lending side could work under the Department of Corporations, and that's how I started. So it made it a little easier to fast track it. And you worked under a team and you lead generation, things like that. But people were at interest rates in the 9s on their first, and like 11 and a 13 on their seconds. And then the market changed to the 6%, and people could get like a 6% loan. So it was the heyday. I tell people it was kind of like Wolf of Wall Street. The money just came flowing in quick and really fast. And, everyone was making money. And with that, it brings a lot of bad people into the industry because there's so much money. But, I definitely didn't feel worthy, especially when I seen the people, like there's people with Bentleys and Lamborghinis at the office. And, you hear stories like one person, I think he worked at Fremont Bank. He took a limo every day to work. It was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy. And with all that, excess, comes all the other stuff with it. But, the big personalities and, the fast talkers, people comparing their Rolexes and things. And it was pretty eye opening and awesome at the same point, because I went from being one of the poorest kids to being in that environment where I never even imagined being in a room with people with that kind of money. And it was really crazy. But, I definitely had a lot of doubt. Like I said, I used to hide from people, especially at night. I'd wait till the office was empty, and I'd come in my jeans and my work boots, kind of smelly, because I'd bathe, but I was like, man, I got to get in and work. I'd work on my stuff really late, or I'm studying the books and using the computers and things like that. And, I was really nervous and didn't have the nicest car like these guys. And so there was a lot of self-doubt in the beginning, and it was really tough. But coming from the fight game and all the being poor, that perseverance, that hard work ethic, and that ability to, take corrective criticism and be honest with yourself, that all came into play then. The owner, and I actually still work with the president of our corporation. So when we started, I believe there were seven branches. No, there was 3 branches when I started with them. And we went to 75 branches, over 1,000 agents at the time. And I became really good friends with the owner and the president. Like I said, we're still friends to this day. We still work together. We're always collaborating. And we'd always say, hey, when things fell apart and we separate, we're going to get the band back together again. But I would see everyone kind of suck up to the owners, him and his wife, and they were just really open-hearted, good people. And it just didn't seem that genuine. And I never wanted to be that person, that disingenuine. And so I would hold back and I wouldn't talk to him. And then he would see that. And when we talk, I try to make sure I was sincere. Like, hey, I would tell him, like, thank you for this opportunity. You have no idea what you did for me by giving me this opportunity. You changed my life, my family's lives, and a lot of my extended family's life by giving me this opportunity. So I'm 100% to the day I die. I'm gonna be loyal to that man. And he believed me. And when things would get rough, after a while, he would call my partner and I. He said, "Hey man, things are looking bad. I need you to see if you guys can save this branch in Fresno or whatever. Go take a look at it." We became that person, and to have him on, we're on each other's cell phones, and it was that genuine respect and knowing that I had earned his respect through hard work and honesty. It meant a lot.
And real estate is also known for its numbers, and not just profits, but people. There's realtors everywhere. There's people in the real estate game everywhere. There's brokers everywhere. But I feel like, man, there's certain qualities that you have to have to make sure you're one of those top tier. And in your experience in the game, what are those qualities?
Definitely perseverance and the ability to learn and read people, right? Communicate well. And I was horrible at math. So people go, "You got into finance and real estate and you're horrible at math?" I go, "I know. But, thankfully there's a lot of tools and areas to learn. So you have a lot of stuff to supplement it. But, at the core of it, you're a salesperson, right? And any business, you realize if you pay attention, you get enough mentors and knowledge, you realize you got to stay focused on the money-making activities.
Yeah.
So you can look real busy attending all the mixers and, taking all the pictures with people. And you'll see some of them, they're like professional mixer agents. They're at every mixer, but they're not closing any deals. Oh. Every title office knows them. They're eating all the donuts, but, or they're always at the office, right? And the sharks got to swim and hunt to eat. And so if you're at the office every day, you're probably not out closing too many deals. You got to be out there and go after it. And if you're at the office, it better be on money-making activities, in my opinion. So, once I learned that, it helps. And some people will get, that opinion like, hey, they brush off a lot of work, right? Or he doesn't want to work. But that's not the case. The thing is, like you said, you could be busy writing emails, responding to other little things, answering all these sales calls, people trying to market to you, or you can stay focused on things that are going to bring in money, which is bringing in leads, getting the contract signs, and getting them closed and moving on to the other deals. And with sales, it's all about pipeline. You got to get that pipeline chocked full to where it's choking. So you got to keep, pack it in that pipeline.
Yeah. And you and I, we come from a combat sports background, and man, being into business and being into entrepreneurship, it's like, I know for a fact competition drives us both. Have you noticed that, where I feel like the more you're into the game and the more you excelled in the game, it's like you approach competition with just the biggest smile on your face.
Yeah, you don't sweat it. And, with the fight game, I think, I always say, fighters are born, they're not made, right? You could teach someone to fight, but you can't give them a fighter's heart. And 90% of it's between the ears and right here. Oh. So you got to have that, that grit, that tenacity and that ambition and that drive, and that ability to endure suffering to achieve your goal in anything. And like you always see, like the champion isn't the person that wins every time, because the minute they face adversity, they collapse because they've never tasted it, and it's that person that knows the coppery, bitter taste of their own blood, or the feeling of laying down on that mat and with everything aching and everything in your body telling you, just give up. Do you stay there or do you pick yourself up? And not only do you pick yourself up, do you find a way to win? And with that one-on-one competition, even in the streets, I used to fight a lot, getting fights in the streets, and I was kind of a quiet kid and we moved around a lot. So I would always fight the bully. I had to face a bully in every school. But one thing, my cousins, we used to joke around. My one cousin goes, "You like it. I see it. You enjoy it. You're kind of sick in the head with it." But it's that there's no greater test, right? Is one person against another and it's either you make it or you don't. And there's no one in between. Like team sports, a little different. You can have an off day and still win.
Yeah.
When you're a fighter and you have an off day, that person's trying to collapse your world, and you're trying to collapse theirs, and someone's going to come out on top.
Yeah.
And and there's something about that in that victory.
Bro, it's so primal.
Yeah.
Like it's my barber asked me that the other day too. He was like, man, what if you have to do any sport ever in the world, like what would you do? It's like, do fighting. I was like, there's nothing better than fighting, man. I was like, there's so much ownership in fighting because everything is your fault.
Yeah.
Whether you win, it's your fault. When you lose, that's your fault.
You can't blame your coaches, can't blame anyone.
It's complete full ownership. And that's what frustrates me about the game is a lot of fighters at the highest level still make excuses. Like, I don't want to make excuses, but like on the post-fight show, it's like, guys, like just say he was a better man. He beat me. Hope we get to fight again. Fighting, man. I think that's your upbringing and your combat experience. It's like your edge, it's like what gives us that edge. Like where I feel like people involved in military and people involved in combat sports, they're just very different.
And you get along really well. I think because we all know that taste of adversity and that feeling of being alone and the suffering. And what do we always say? Embrace the suck, right? Military people say the same thing. You find joy in the misery. And, when you're a fighter, like when we're there, right, as a group training, we're hurting each other, right? We're hurting each other. We're beating each other up. But there's that bond. That bond, there's something about that bond through shared misery.
It's weird, right?
And it's a brotherhood. And when you call someone a brother, you mean it. Like, that's my brother.
Yeah.
And even if you guys hadn't served together or fought together, and you meet another fighter or person like that had shared that misery, you know that they had been through that misery, so you have that brotherhood somehow.
Yeah.
And it's that shared relationship through suffering, that love, like, hey, man, been there.
Yeah.
I know what you're made of because I know what it took for me to get through it, and you went through it. And like you said, that's that weird bond, the unbreakableness that no matter how bad it gets, I'll survive it.
That word stop, that word retire, I just feel like I'll be bored and miserable, honestly. I feel like there needs to be that suck. I feel like there needs to be that struggle all the time. Otherwise, I just won't be genuinely happy. Yeah. Like I feel like I need to be solving problems on a consistent basis. Otherwise, I'm just not fulfilled. And I don't want to say, unfortunately, fighting gave me that principle. I am very honored and blessed that fighting gave me that principle because people always say, like, Daniel, you work and you go through your day-to-day like as if you're on training camp. I was like, exactly, and I don't even have a fight booked. That's the crazy part, where every day is still a training camp.
And my son laughs. He goes, "You love misery." And then I told him, I go, you know what? I go, comfort breeds weak men. Right, and you see the weakness in them, because they don't know how it feels to suffer and be dirty, and they run from adversity. And I never want to be the person that runs from adversity. I want to be the rock that people lean on in the storm.
Yeah, and
I want to raise the family to be the same way. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or a child. Be that rock in adversity. It's gonna come, but you're gonna break yourself upon me because I'm not breaking. And so I still keep that. We hike, we run, we shoot, work out. Even in the sometimes we'll drink our protein shake, and like I won't mix it up well, or I just shoot shotgun the pre-workout down, and I'm like, let's go. And he's like, you're like a creature. He goes, we got a blender, blend it. He goes, why do you suffer so much? And I go,
I'll just chew it.
Yeah. He goes, and we laugh about it. We joke around. He goes, use this like to suffer. And I go, I do a little bit. And I thought about it, and we're joking around. I go being a sissy, right? Like teasing them when we're having our banter. But I kind of do like that suffering because it keeps that edge. And, you don't want to get too soft. I think, like I said, the people that always want to seek comfort and seek the easy way, they fold, and, you see them in adversity, they fold. And I never want to be that person that folds. No. Because too many people are counting on me. The more that you build your family and you build your life around you, and some of us are called to be leaders who just have it in us, right? And so you want to emulate the qualities of a good leader. And so if you're someone that's always folding or you're losing that edge, it's going to carry down the ranks, just like in the military, right? You gotta maintain that military bearing and discipline. Yeah. And you carry that through your life, and you'll see that you do better. And I feel myself as I age more, And I see people my own age that seek that life of comfort, drinking and smoking and laziness. They're falling apart, and I may have aches and pains, but I'm moving pretty good. I'm pretty healthy. I'm able to enjoy my family, enjoy the kids, and have a fruitful life. And it's part of the keeping that edge.
It's a very, very strange thing to deal with suffering because of the feeling of fulfillment that it gives you and the edge that it gives you. And as a father, it's like you want to almost pass that down, because if I had, say, 3 boys, 4 or whatever, 2, it's like, how do I instill principles to make sure they do not grow up weak? And it's funny because you grew up very differently than I'm sure than they did, right? Oh, yeah. You brought them a different kind of look and an opportunity because of what you bring to the table. So it's funny where you have to kind of almost put that reminder, like, hey kids, like we have a house. Yes, we have a roof over our head. We have food in our bellies. We got clothes on our backs, but we still got to work. We still got to wake up early and work out. We still got to do this. We still got to do that. We got to pay our dues, So it's so strange where you're seeing that trajectory now where people are becoming fathers, but why are all these young men becoming weak?
Or even in the work field or in general, and I see it. You have a bunch of 30-year-old boys. They rather play video games, or they rather party all night, sleep all day, and they don't. Some of them are already starting their families, but they don't want to raise their families, right? And not just your sons, but your daughters. Got to raise them strong. And like I mentioned, my brother-in-law, my niece, and us, we raised our kids together like brothers and sisters, really close. And, we taught our daughters right away what to look for in a man, because your daughters are going to emulate who you are, right? They're going to look for that as their relationship. Yeah. So you want them to say, hey, you need to, start a relationship with a man that has the core values that we have. You want to have a good family. You want them to come from a good family, because remember, those are going to be people talking to your kids when you do have kids, right? Those are the people you're going to be married into. And the same thing with your sons. You want to find a woman that's going to be a partner in your life, right? Yeah. And it's a partnership. And you may take a lead in some areas, you're going to take a lead in another, but you're going to grow together and build a life together as a team. And those are things that people just don't learn. Or I feel like those values are getting lost, those old school values. And, I try to instill that around us and keep that indoctrinated, in the we call it control your sphere of influence as much as you can, and keep that going. But I see it a lot. And some of that, as we fall in that leadership role and I'm around people, I try to tell them, I'm going to be the leader, that's worthy of leading you. Right? I'm never going to ask you to do anything I wouldn't 100% do myself. And I'm going to care about you as much as I care about myself. So part of being a leader is you're in service to the people you lead, in my opinion, right? It's not all about titles and money. And you have to ask yourself, part of it is keeping them on pace with the core mission or objective. The other part is caring about their needs as an individual. And you got to adjust your leadership style to bring out the best of them for their personality. You can't have the same method with every person, because they're not robots. So you have to be able to move and adapt, even with your kids, your relatives, and you got to be flexible and learn. But I think if you emulate the qualities, it helps give them a guideline, kind of like a beacon. Be that light in the dark times.
I like how you said, like, every person you have to kind of adjust differently. You got to lead differently for every single person. Mm-hmm. Man, that's kind of like what your career brings to you. It's like the art of sales, the art of human psychology. It's like all of that comes into play.
The salesperson, it's just like a fighter. It's either in you or it isn't. Yeah. And I think there's certain ways you got to be careful when you go into sales in general. And one of the things is not becoming a snake or a shark, in the sense where all you care about is money and closing the deal, that there's other things tied to that. And I think if you keep true to your core ethics, or you find some good core ethics and you stay true to that, like you said, you can adjust to the person and the sales methods, but you're not being disingenuous, right? You're closing deals and you're being honest with people. And, because like, I hate to say it, it was like the used car salesmen. Yeah. they all flocked to the real estate industry at the time.
Yeah.
And you would hear all the horror stories of things they did, and they're kind of like, take the quick sell and run. And, if you're really trying to make a career in sales or anything like that, it's longevity, so, I don't just want to take your sell and run. I want to build the business relationship. I want to do your deal, all your deals, and eventually do your kids' deals, maybe do your grandkids' deals, and all your friends and families' deals. I want to be your person, your guy. And to do that, I'm going to earn your respect by hard work and good work. I'm going to show you why I'm worth what you're paying me. After a while, a good name gets out quick, but you do one bad deal, a good deal may refer you one person, but you do a bad, shitty deal for someone, they're going to tell 100 people.
Yeah.
And people don't forget that. So, you want to have a good name. Like I said, that ethics and keep your word, and I think, those things transcend anything. Those core values, that good reputation and that hard work, that transcends anything in life. And when you find out those people, they stand out, and you can put them together in the room. You'll talk to a fast talker and they'll sell, but you're in the room with the snake oil salesman. And then the other people, you're like, this person's sharp, they're hungry, but they're fair.
My mother, she molded me and really embedded that to me. It's like, man, you do one thing wrong to somebody that will get around, especially into the whole business sector. And that's the thing about that too, man. Leadership, it's one thing that I'm still trying to get better at. I'm still trying to callous that muscle, because I did get put into like the leadership role, but I've noticed, just like you, where there's different phases of it. There's different layers of it that you kind of need to get better. And there's another step, there's another mountain. And just like, whoa, I need to make an adjustment here. And it's funny. It's like, I'm only 30 years old, but I'm like, I need to get better in that aspect for sure.
And it's not something you ever reach an end goal to. Life is a journey, right? The leadership, you evolve, you learn, like you said, and it's ever changing. Right when you think you get it figured out, something's going to knock you for a loop. And it's that ability to adapt and pivot and like reassess and learn. And that's with business, And you'll see people, they'll take forever doing their business plan. They'll meticulously do every little step and never go anywhere. And then the person goes, you know what? We're good enough. Let's take a shot. And we'll pivot on the fly and adjust. We'll learn from our mistakes. And usually those are the people that have a lot of success faster, because it's never going to be 100%. Just like the fight game. You're always going into a fight camp injured. Yeah. Right? There's always an injury. Same thing with business. Everyone thinks, I jammed my foot, my hands, I think I broke a finger. And there was times I want my fight license where I could barely close my hand and I still passed the medical somehow.
That's great.
Because that's just life, right? You got to fake it sometimes and keep pushing through and adapt and pivot. Just like business is never going to be perfect, and leadership, we're fallible. We're going to learn. Even when we know better, we make mistakes.
Yeah.
There's so many times throughout the day I'm like, man, I probably shouldn't have said that, or I wish I would have did this, or I would have prepared a little better. And there's all those second guesses and mistakes and relationships, and you just learn. You do the best you can. And going back to, like we said, our value and our word, I think your reputation and your word, if you learn to hang on to those type of things, it means something. Because when you do make a mistake and you say, you know what, I made a mistake, I apologize, I'm going to do better. It goes a lot further than someone who just keeps steamrolling people and is real disingenuous. They go, oh, sorry, and move on. Those kind of things, it counts, and the honesty. And I always tell people, if you lie on the little things, when you need them to believe you on the big things, they're not going to believe you. So your word has to matter no matter where you go. It doesn't matter if you're talking to the janitor or homeless person. You treat everyone with the same level of respect. You carry yourself with the same ethics no matter where you go. And I try to teach that to my kids and my family, especially them, because they'll, like your family and your loved ones and your friends, that's your legacy to the world. Money fades, the tombstone crumbles, but those are the ones that carry your teaching and your memory on and pass those on for generations.
I feel like not only do we need to have a good reputation, but I feel like we also need to work with people who have great reputations too. I went to a dinner a while ago, and it was interesting where this person wanted to work with us. And when we were having dinner, there was a waitress that came by our table, very, very beautiful young lady. And the way he was talking to her was very flirtatious.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hey, don't you got a wife back at home? Don't you got kids back at home?
Yeah.
And he's like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. It's all good. Like, who cares? He's like, she's hot, huh? I was like, yeah, she's very attractive. Never saw him again.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't want to work with people that I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, if they don't have good morals or principles or values or ethics, I'm going to get out of that room. I don't need to be there. And I also walked out of that room because I was like, if you're willing to lie to your wife and to your children, I was like, you're going to lie to me when it comes to the business sphere.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, not interested. I was like, all love and respect, wish you nothing but success. I don't think you need to see me anymore.
You know, I had that exact same conversation with another business associate. Exactly. and it's funny because they're both really successful people, right?
Yeah.
And I noticed like they kind of separated from each other. And I was friends with both of them. And he told me something, and you know, the perception, right? Social media and things like that. You know, you can paint whatever picture you want to paint to the public, right? But you know, things that go behind the scene are a little different. And he told me, he goes, you know what? If any man, he goes, I don't associate them. You know, for one, any man that'll cheat on his wife, I'm not going to go into business with, because if he's willing to do that to the person that loves him most, what is he going to do to me? And just like you said, and he goes, I knew right there I couldn't trust him, because when the push came to shove and it came time for the serious stuff, he'd probably either cheat me out of money or leave me hanging. And, you know, if he's willing to do it to the wife and the mother of his children. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And I've been bitten by bad partners and mentors like that. And exactly what you think happened. You know, the money got funny, and when push came to shove, they abandoned us. And I learned my lesson. Like, you know, like you said, business and partnerships is like a marriage, and you have to go into it with someone that, one, you want to spend time with, because you're going to be on the phone with them a lot. You're going to be traveling, and two, you have to trust them. And their problems become your problems. And like you said, if they're doing bad taxes, if they're ripping people off, or maybe they're earning money illegally, and now you're tying yourself financially to them, you know, you're probably going to get yourself drug in with it. You know, so you got to be really careful who you choose as a partner. Yeah. And in the beginning, you don't think like that because you're hungry. You're like, hey man, there's opportunity. This guy, you know, he seems like a good prospect. And then you're like, okay, I'll get into business. And when you find out in the hard time, you know, the hard way, that, you know, you picked the wrong partner. And usually if you study them, right, if you listen to people long enough, they'll tell you exactly what you need to hear.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll see those type of characters, they usually rotate their sphere of influence and their people around them pretty quick. You know, you'll see that they're hanging around different groups and people that are like, hey, that's my brother this year. And then the next year they got a different brother, right? And I started noticing about certain people if you're around them long enough. And then I'm like, there's a reason why they're rotating through so many friends and their groups, and they're jumping from, or you see the habitual people that jump from every little business, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm in this business now, I'm in that business, because they ruined their name in that other one. Yeah. Now they need to go, you know, find the scam in the new one, or move to the next group. And there's certain people out here that seem pretty successful online, and you see them, and I've watched them for 20 years, and I've watched the same rotation over and over and over. And like you said, they get that reputation, like, hey, don't get in business with that person because they're kind of a snake. It's so weird. And they just move on to the next one. But one thing, you know, you learn, just like going back to the fight game, is your instincts. Listen to those instincts. And every time I didn't listen to my gut feeling and my instincts is when I regretted it. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, I may not have had all the solid proof, but something told me, this walk. You know, or jump, you know, go for it. But the times it told me to walk, or don't, like you said, don't trust that person, or something just don't feel right, is when I got my hand burned. So now the older I get, I listen to those gut instincts, because it was given to us, you know, for a reason. You know, listen to that. You know, like you said, you see them and you're like, it may have only been a cut of the eye, you know, the way they looked at you or something they said, and you're like, nope. Nope.
There was a story that I read quite recently, and this couple was they were about to do this business partnership, and they were playing golf with the man that they were going to do business with. And the man was a little skeptic and kind of like, I don't know about this guy. I'm just gonna see how it is. We're talking, we're networking here, getting to know each other, etc. And then the wife was really paying attention to the man. And then what she saw was him cheat in golf.
Mm-hmm.
And she told her husband, don't do business with this man. He's like, why? He's like, because he cheated.
Mm-hmm.
He moved the ball when you weren't looking.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, he'll cheat you. He was like, babe, let's just give him a chance. Let's see what's up. Blah, blah, blah. Down the road, guess what? Got cheated.
Yeah.
Got hurt when he didn't need it to. Like, there's instincts there. And there's also a woman's intuition where if she sees something, you know, they sense something also. So it's like, if they give you some sort of like intake, man, take it.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I'm the same way, brother. We sometimes ignore our gut instincts. Why? Like, it's almost like because we want to find out almost for ourselves. But it's like, man, we pay the price when we don't listen to our gut instincts, right?
Well, I think it almost seems like, you know, because we live in the age of science and technology, right? Something as primal as gut instinct seems like almost like make believe, right? At least for me, it's like, you know, how can you quantify that with someone? My gut tells me no. You know, you can't quantify that in any matrix, right? You can't put that on a spreadsheet. You know, you can't, you know, package it and sell it to someone. But my gut tells me no, right? And, you know, I think that's why we talk ourselves out of it. Because if you tell someone, you know, we can find all the reasons to, you know, you can skew numbers and matrix a certain way, right? You can kind of, the positive and negatives, you know, you can skew them, but you can't, you know, that you can't do it with your gut. Right, your gut is either yes or no, and you either listen to it or you don't. Yeah. I was listening to the Art of the Deal by Donald Trump, the audiobook, and I started to, you know, I've always heard about it, but I've never read it, and
I need to make that purchase. I need to make that purchase.
and it was great listening to his mindset, and he was talking about that this morning when I was getting ready. He was talking about it. He goes, sometimes I just go off my gut, and you know, people think I'm crazy, but my gut's telling me to go with it, and I listen to it. And he was saying that, you know, that's what separates me from a lot of people. You know, like they don't listen to that instinct, and that's what makes a great salesperson. Sometimes is that ability to read the tea leaves, to read the people, and go with your gut. And I started thinking, yeah, you're right. Sometimes, like, you know, everything like to get into the real estate, which financially has been a blessing upon blessing for 20 plus years, but nothing at the time told me I should be a realtor. You know, or get into business like that. You know, I had a good career, and you know, I could have been happy and just progressed in that career at the city, and never tried to do anything extra with it. But you know, sometimes you got to follow your gut and your instincts, and who knows where it's going to take you.
You know, and going back to the whole say numbers game, you know, real estate, man, brings so much opportunities, so much change into our lives, right? And within that change, there also has to be a lot of discipline, because something that I've noticed too, whether it's like watching documentaries or witnessing people around here, is when they have that certain number attached to their name, sometimes they're a little bit reckless, not even a little bit, a lot. That word grounded, where our success gets a little bit higher, our stock gains a little bit higher, and our income gets a little higher. Yeah. And it's something that we don't recognize, something like, man, I've never had this much money in my life. Like, what do I do? Wait, I can do anything now. Like, what's going on? But that's where that grounded, that discipline needs to be there. Have you ever almost put yourself in that position where you saw a number attached to your name, and it is almost like that demon in your head was kind of like, hey, we can do this, we can do that. And how did you fight that to make sure that you are grounded and disciplined with your finances?
In the beginning, right, I had you know, I never tasted that kind of money, and I wasn't a person that was real flashy, and everything I did was in the sense to I want to build something. You know, I want to keep growing. You know, I was never one to say, hey, I made this much money, flash people. I never wanted to be the most extravagant person in the room, because I always knew there was someone bigger, and it was a little bit fleeting. But I noticed that I started chasing that carrot a little too aggressively. So, you know, going up until beginning of the real estate career, you know, I came in the heyday at the time, last 30 years, making really good money. Really quick, I was making probably 3 times what I was making at the city. And I had this goal. I said, hey, I'm going to be a millionaire by 30, right? And that seemed like a lofty goal at the time when I said it, but I didn't realize how attainable it was. So I ended up achieving it by 27, maybe 28. It's hard because sometimes the time blends, but I attained it a lot faster than I thought. And then by 30, I was a multimillionaire, right? Multiple homes, successful real estate office, plenty of cash. And it seemed like everything was going, perfectly. I had, thought I had saved enough cash. I had retirement accounts, life insurance policies, the brand new cars, the kids, refurnished the whole house. Oh, $50,000, refurnished the whole house. Had a brand new house built for the family. I'm trying to actively buy land to build the mansion, right? The build the mansion type thing.
Oh, man.
Planning all these things, right? Then 2007 hits, and I'm in there with my partner, and we're like, I think the bubble's going to pop because this is not going to work for long, right? We can't sustain this pace. And we're like, oh, probably, market starts slowing down. Maybe we should start, kind of hedging, getting ready. Instantly, the bottom fell out. So I went from a multimillionaire at 30 to completely dead broke by 30, 31. I mean, wiped out, zero to homeless again. And so, everything I thought I had saved up, all the things I thought I had done right, it just came crashing down. It wasn't because I had, did anything. Yeah, I was over leveraged, like everyone was at the time. I had a lot of houses with big loans on them, thinking that I could keep earning. But once the money stopped flowing in, then I realized, hey, I was way over leveraged, and now I'm having to cover these big nuts and all the other problems that come along with it. And so it was like a catastrophe, right? Lost the family, financial strain always a lot of times, like, I think the number one reason for divorce. And this, it was like a bad country song. Lost everything, right? And we thought, man, it was so close. So close. Finally had the dream. Like, it was living my dream life, and it's gone again. And this is the part where I told you, where I'm like, man, and I'd pray, and I'd be like, God, why'd you give me that taste and just take it away from me? And I'm like, man, this is horrible. And I'm like, most people when you experience that, if they hadn't had that perseverance or that adversity, they'll collapse, right? But I knew I couldn't collapse because my life's not my own. I got these kids, and I'm just too stupid or stubborn to give up, like the Rocky of real estate.
I like that.
Everything's set against me. I'm not the fastest. I'm not the smartest, but I'm just too dumb to give up sometimes. And so I got up and I go, I cleaned toilets before. I can clean toilets again. And so the midst of losing the office, I'm running my, our multi-million-dollar office with my partner, who's a great partner, a loyal partner. And, we raised our families together, and I love that, man. I'm guarding dead cows at night as a security guard. It's serious. Here's how I would do it. When we're trying to fix it, I thought, if we could just hang on long enough, it'll turn around. I had no idea it was going to last that long and get as bad as it did. And so we would run the office. I'd run home and go to sleep for a couple hours or eat dinner, and then work a guard job all night. And then the office could kind of run itself. So around 9, 10 o'clock, I'd come into the office after I slept for a couple hours because my shift ended at 6. So I get like 2 hours sleep. I'd change and shower and go. By the time when I was a guard, it just wasn't paying enough. And then I knew they paid you by location. Some locations paid more than the other, but what that was, the worse the location, the better they paid. The worse the neighborhood, or
That's crazy.
So, so they the one that paid the most of all the positions was working at a tallow factory in Crow's Landing. And are you familiar with what a tallow factory is? Where they process the dead cows in the middle of nowhere. And I was the only guard on this little shack in the middle of nowhere all night long. And I would watch these dead cows. And so I would go there, I would study and read and plan my next course of action, like how we're going to rebound from this. But it was miserable. It stunk. It was gross. There was literally like a 10-foot tall pile of dead animals outside my little tough shed, guard shack. And I would have to process the trucks. And sometimes the kids would come bring me lunch, and they're like, "Ooh, Daddy, it stinks," and they still talk about it. And I told my friend about this, and for the longest time, I thought it was water I was walking through because one of the guards said, "Hey, man, if you're gonna work that post, you probably want to get rain boots." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't mind getting my boots dirty. I'll just wash them off." He goes, "No, you're gonna need rain boots," but he didn't tell me why.
Uh,
And so I would walk through this little stream at night, and you'd hear the coyotes, and it got creepy when you're the only one there.
yeah.
There's stuff running around, and you're constantly like, and you think you're tough, but those voices start getting to you, right? You see monsters in every corner, and I found out that stream I was walking to was blood running out of the factory. And when I seen it in the daylight, finally, I'm like, "Oh, disgusting! I've been walking through
Ooh.
blood," and that's why he told me to wear the boots. So, I had to go through all that, right, and then figure out a way to come back from it again, you know, and it was just tough. So then now that we're kind of having the new renaissance of real estate, Ray, and the other entrepreneurial things, I'm a lot more cautious and almost too cautious at times. And I gotta get back that wild man a little bit because one of my partners was like, "F it, man, let's just do it." And I go, "Man, but what if we lose it all again? I don't want you to experience that. Like when they trust me with your money, I don't want to lose your money." He's like, "You did it once, you could do it again." And he had so much faith in me, one of my partners, and we balanced ourselves out like that. But I was so afraid, and then little by little, I'm getting rid of that gun shy. But one thing I learned is, one of my attorneys had called me. We had a conversation this weekend with his girlfriend. She wants to get in the real estate game, and he goes, I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna call my client, my friend, and he'll talk to you about real estate." And and of course, being an attorney, he sets up a formal interview. They had prepared questions. It was pretty good. Like she took it really serious. But I told her something. I said, "You're not gonna get rich being a realtor. You're not gonna get rich being a broker. You're gonna get rich with the money that you do with it, how you manage it. Anything you do, it's how you manage it. Money is like grabbing sand. You can grab a handful of sand, it's gonna run through your fingers. So the trick is how to hang on to what you make and how to manage it. And I know. So I was trying to explain to everyone now is, how do you reinvest that money that you make? How do you get that money to keep growing for you? And usually, you can only do so much work as a realtor. So if you want to if you want to work yourself to death and never see your family, you can have some amount of success, but you're probably not going to be very happy, right? And you're only going to grow so far because there's only so many deals you could do. So then you got to become a broker, get a team under you, and compound yourself, right? Get the systems and business processes to grow on its own, and that's where the wealth starts coming in. Because eventually, then you think about exit. Who's going to buy your company from you, right? And the same thing with any business is now I learn is go into the business with the end in mind. What's your exit strategy? How far do you want to take the business before you sell it? Do you want to make it a legacy business? Things like that. And then you start finding out, okay, where do I strategically place myself? And how do I keep growing? And so now I'm about, gaining passive income. I'm getting a little closer to retirement age in the sense where I will never stop, right? But sometime you're going to have to make time to smell the roses too.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to find that balance, but I think was the cautionary tale was like, don't chase that carrot so far that you run off the edge. And unfortunately I did. And a lot of us did. We got decimated. The whole country got decimated. But, it was like, we thought it was going to gradually slow down and maybe some belt tightening.
Yeah.
And we're all like, almost like a herd of sheep. We pushed ourselves right over the edge, chasing that carrot.
Did you ever think that you would jump back into real estate after that?
I knew that was so lucrative. There's not very many things you can make that kind of money with the amount of education, right? It basically limitless potential with it. So once I seen the keys to real estate, and if you look at almost any successful person and any financial person, they have some type of their portfolio on real estate.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. And, I knew that was one of my fastest ways to come back. It only took me, like if you're lucky, 1 or 2 real estate deals, you could change your life, in the sense where you'd have to work months to make that kind of money. especially here in the Bay Area with the dollar amounts. And that was kind of the blessing of being where we're at here. And I liken the Bay Area to the Alexandria of the world, right? All the knowledge, all the innovation comes out of here. And one of the things when the market crashed and collapsed, this is one of the first places to bounce back. And it's also one of the best real estate markets in the world. It's like number one in the nation, and I think it's like number three in the world, the Bay Area. And not Hollywood, not New York, the Bay Area, right? The geeky, nerdy tech Bay Area. And you think that all these other places would, be hotter, but it's here, and we're blessed with that. Yeah. And going back to the fight game, the same thing with the fight game. San Jose, California, one of the best fight camps in the world far.
If not the best, man. Jeez.
Yeah. The number of champions, martial arts, boxers, everyone from the Bay Area that's come from here. Bruce Lee, AKA, crazy, everything man. From here. Crazy. Right here. And we were lucky enough to live in the Bay Area and experience all that. And the magic of doing all the things that we got to do is really like a blessing that, people don't ever get to experience. They have to go from all over the place, or these little pockets of America, Canada, Mexico, to kind of experience these things. And we were born right in it. And the opportunity was just waiting for us to trip over it.
You are successful. But that time where the market took a hit, the whole world took a hit nearly. And obviously when you bounce back up, how do you make sure you prepare yourself for when a moment comes back up like that again?
I think it goes back to what you build your foundation on. They use that parable of building your foundation on sand or building it on stone. And I felt like my foundation was built on sand. So when the storm came, it got washed away. And then I learned that, hey, the good financial principles, get the good mentors, and get the knowledge, right? Don't get the get rich quick schemes. Those people don't last. They may sell you the multi-level marketing schemes, and things like that, but they usually don't last. They're on to the next one in a few years. So I wanted to get down to the basics, learn good financial principles, learn about investing, learn about building, and actually be knowledgeable in the field I'm in, not just someone that can make the sale. And I go back to that, what's the legacy you're going to leave behind? And so then I start strategically planning, because I go, I may not get to that goal, but I can start the foundation. And I can lay the principles down, and it's up to them if they want to take it or sell what I leave them, right? And that's fine, because the path I have right now may not be for the kids or the rest of my family, but they're not going to have to make some of the hard choices I had to make. And, I wanted them to, my son, not so much, but my daughter, she's getting a little frustrated with me because I make them struggle.
Her or the voice?
No, my daughter, a little bit. Yeah. And she would kind of laugh, go, you're just being cheap. She goes, I see in the bank accounts you got money, right? Like I tell her, no, I don't have money for that, or we don't have money in the budget for that. And she goes, you always tell everyone you're broke. She goes, I seen your bank accounts, all kinds of them. I go, no. I go, those are working for us. You don't tap that because it's going to be gone. That's for the future. I go, that bank account, when we needed it, that's what paid for the fixed car. That's what's paying for your college, things like that, right? I go, those are things you got to keep it growing, right? It's like, the golden egg, the golden goose, right? You can't eat the golden goose and then, you're going to stop getting the eggs from it. So I go, you got to stay within reason and the budget, and, learn how to manage it for long term. Like you said, the rich and the wealthy, wealthy is a whole different animal. And I want to be wealthy in the sense that, the wealth's going to create legacy, opportunity for everyone for generations to come, like the Waltons. Right? The Waltons, probably one of the richest American families, by far, multiple. You look at the billionaires list, they're all on it. And if you add their wealth together, if that one person had it, they'd be, astronomically wealthy. Yeah. And so I think about that, and was it the Rockefellers? The difference was they didn't teach them to manage the money. The money was gone within a generation or two, right? And so, you got to learn from those lessons and know your history and build upon it. And, hopefully we do it right. But we really don't know. You know, like my parents, for some of the mistakes they made, I learned what not to do, and some of the took the good that they gave us, right? The
Yeah.
love, the values, right?
Mm.
And I remember, like, I don't know if you remember, or you might not have seen it, but some of the other guys from AK remember my son a lot. So he used to be like the unofficial water boy and towel guy. So he'd open the cages for us, and he'd have everyone their bottles. He was just a little guy. And when I was boxing, a lot of times he was in his little saucer, and he'd have his bottle. I'd have to take my gloves off because he's getting cranky. And my coaches are old school, and they're like, "Man, you bringing this kid to the thing? That's what his mom's for." I'm like, man, she wasn't going to have it. If I wanted me here training, I had to take him with me.
Yeah.
And they'd laugh, or I'd take my daughter and my niece with me, and then like my daughter would get mad, but they had like a huge crush on Josh, right? And so they'd be sitting at the table, AKHQ, and they're like, and laughing and seeing all the guys with their 6-packs and everything. And I'm like, come on, let's go.
Oh my God.
But I try to bring them in. And the same thing with the real estate deals and the business. I meet with my attorneys. I'd have like my daughter with me or my son. Like recently I had a listing where we're doing it for our family. And my son was with me, and he was doing all the rehab work with me because my uncle needed help, and he was getting too old to do the work. I go, got you. And it was really a lot of fun working with them. Of course, we were bagging on each other, and you're tired, but it was fun. That journey together, and we're building something as a family, and that kind of stuff's really cool to get them involved, and my nieces and nephews, and get them engaged. And with Latino families, it's they never let you get too big for your britches, right? You keep you grounded. Like they bag on you like, yeah, look at you, team leader. So like some of my friends,
That's so true.
Yeah, they'll go, hey man, do your kids get excited about stuff like this? Or like with the acting and all these things? I'm like, not really. I know they're supportive, but most of the time they're making fun of me or like joking around. Like when I was doing my auditions or different things, or like my posts for Instagram, my daughter, I guess, was making a whole TikTok or account of my outtakes and making fun of me, and in a good way. It was funny, but I guess a lot of people were following it, and she would laugh, you'd make a mistake. I'm like, mother freaking, or I'd say something funny, and then the whole time I was like wondering what she was doing, because she'd always want to be in the room with me when I was doing it. And the whole time she was kind of like laughing, and I was like, "Oh, you little sucker!" It was kind of funny though when I seen it, and it was sweet. And then, like I know they believe in you, your family supports you, but like you said, it keeps you grounded. Your friends keep you grounded if you got genuine friends.
Yeah.
And I think it's good because, like you said, like you see people in Hollywood, they get surrounded by yes people, or people in business get surrounded by yes people. Yeah. And you go way off center because you have no one to kind of give you that corrective advice or the truth. Like, hey man, yeah, that was a bad call, or like, you get kind of weird.
Yeah, that was my downfall when it comes to, like, I dealt with like 2 losses in my professional career as a fighter because I was just surrounded by yes men all the time, like friends wise and coaching wise, unfortunately. And I didn't not even seek out. It was almost like it just wasn't even there. But luckily, when I did find that change and I found that mentor, like, he really put me in my place. He slapped my ego away from me, and he made me channel it in a much better way, which was to win, which is to study an opponent, which is how to face this and accomplish this mountain, etc. It's like you need that, man. It sucks that a lot of people are still surrounded by yes men, especially in business too. It's like, man, no, I want the person that's next to me to critique me constantly. I don't want to be like, man, that was a good conversation. Man, I was doing that. Man, good job. It's like, no. What did I do wrong here? What could I say that was better?
Yeah, where could I get better?
Yeah.
There's always room for improvement. I had the opportunity where I went to a mixer where there was like multi-millionaires everywhere, and in the big B, billionaires. And I was up there early having a cup of coffee, and a guy walks up to me in a tracksuit. Says, "Hi, my name's Bobby." Shakes my hand. "Good morning. We have a conversation. We hang out. We talk." I found out he was probably the richest person there. And he was the most genuine, the sweetest, great person, him and his wife. And like you said, everyone else had the the fancy cars and all that. He wore a Lululemon tracksuit to the event, and he was, sold his company for $1 billion, things like that. But one of the most sweetest, genuine people I could have met, and you see that, and like with you, being a fighter, the connotation is, they're not that smart, right?
No, I am dumb as hell.
No, I think the opposite, total opposite. The minute you open your mouth, how articulate and how thoughtful and insightful your conversations are is extremely impressive.
Thank you, brother.
And I would listen to what you were saying. And I was like, man, I didn't know that guy had all that in there. Because like you said, we'd see each other and we didn't have a lot of conversations like that. And just to see how insightful and thoughtful you were was super impressive. And I know this is just the start of a phenomenal career. And wherever it takes you, you're going to do extremely well. And that knowledge, that curiosity, like you said, that thirst for what's next, what's out there, is going to take you far, because it's already taken you a lot of great places. And I'm excited to watch it.
Thank you, my brother. Well, hey, man, you're a part of it. Like, this is the thing. Just because you came on once doesn't mean you're not coming on again. Like, this is a repetitive thing where it's like, hey, let's do this again. Like, if you let me know you got something coming up that you would like to promote, or just even talk, bro, my house is your house. Like, you are always welcome. Like, we were just talking about off air. It's like this show, yes, it has my name attached to it, but it's also for the people who come on here. I want them to feel like this is their show too. I want to get that message from you one day, like, hey, Daniel, let's link up again. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but let me bring my production over to you now. Like, let's go to your space. Let's set up my production over to you and have the interview done at your environment. And let's just reunite, talk like brothers, have fun, give value, man. Like, that's the whole point of this, brother. This whole show created a crazy network where my phone is filled with problem solvers now, instead of like people who just want to party. You know what I mean? It's a fun trajectory that I want to just keep enhancing. But bro, like this interaction, man, like, man, we've known each other for a long period of time, but getting to know each other like this is beautiful. It's seeing where you've come from and what you've done throughout your day-to-day and all the layers that you've accomplished. Man, it's phenomenal. Like, that's the one thing that I love to see, is just people constantly doing this and enhancing. Bro, it's amazing to see when you first saw them here and then just like, bro, you are not the same guy. What the hell happened?
Yeah, it's really great. Like you said, you cheer for each other's success.
Yeah.
And, like what we created here is going to outlive us. Once it goes out into the internet, this is going to be a monument to what we did long after we're gone. And, who knows who's going to watch this or who's going to be inspired by whatever we may have said today.
Yeah.
And what we continue to do. And that's what's cool about creating things. And just in that sphere, you're putting things out into the world. You're chasing your dreams, but at the same point, who knows who's the next mind, the next spark you're going to inspire, or where the next interview is going to take us or take you. And it's just great. And I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on. And I really enjoyed it.
Of course, my brother.
And I can't wait to the next one.
Oh yeah, amen, my brother. Well, so my very last question to you, my man. If you have to like link up with somebody that was curious about wanting to change the trajectory of their life when it comes to investing, when it comes to just being at a top tier individual in every single aspect of life, what's that value that you would pass on to that individual?
Don't underestimate the value of hard work, and don't sacrifice good core values and ethics for short-term gains. Because if you build your life and your success on a solid foundation, it'll take you a lot further than the short term. That short-term goal, the quick deal, build relationships, learn to understand, be a student of life, and understand that there's no get-rich-quick scheme. You're going to have to put in a lot of hard work, and you're going to face a lot of rejection, and there's going to be a lot more failures and rejections than success.
Yeah.
But there's really, as long as you keep going, there's no failure. It's just a lesson. And you'll survive it and you'll keep growing.
My brother, thank you so much for passing down value. It was great to link up together. And I love seeing what you've done with your life, my man. It is truly phenomenal to see. And what I love to see even more is you're setting a phenomenal example to your kids. Like, truly. Like, there's a lot of people we were talking about when it comes to like young men being weak. And I feel like I've been seeing a lot of weak fathers as well. But man, you are not one of them. And I am truly grateful to be able to be side by side and be able to pick that brain of yours. And my man, I cannot wait for the next link ups, brother. God bless you, my brother. Wish you nothing but success. Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode. If you got a lot of value out of this, please do me a favor and support our channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Make sure to hit that follow button on Spotify to stay updated with our latest episodes. And if you are listening on Apple Podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you would leave a 5-star rating, followed by with a review. Again, thank you all for the support. Stay loving, stay hungry, and stay excellent.